Mini enthusiasts, how are you doing? Welcome back. I hope you're well and I hope you're having a great day. So in today's video, we're going to be building up the rear subframe, or getting everything built up on the rear subframe ready to fit back in the car. But before we do that, I've got a little job to do. So that's Mrs. M's Ford Fiesta there. It's been driving absolutely fine, but she said to me it started making a horrible noise at the front. So I took it for a quick drive and it sounds horrendous. Real sort of heavy sort of crashing noise when you go over bumps in the road and potholes and things like that. Sounds like the offside front. Steering doesn't pull, it drives perfectly normal. It's just when you go over bumps. I'm going to take a guess. Let's see if I'm right. I reckon it's got a broken coil spring, although looking at it, the suspension looks no lower on the driver's side, so maybe not, but it's really, really loud. It sounds like the front suspension's falling to pieces on the car, so maybe it could be an anti-roll bar drop link actually, but they tend to wear gradually. But I'm going coil spring. So before we get into that, I've first got to look at this. I thought I'd show you it, just something a bit different. I won't time lapse or anything like that. We'll just cut to the chase, find out what the issue is. 5 minutes later, thought I'd started losing my touch. So, looking inside there, I'm looking at the spring thinking, oh, that looks okay. But it definitely sounded like a spring to me until you dig. So, there we go. Really, really common problem. Affects all cars, to be honest, or most cars anyway. And it starts out by corrosion on the spring. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on here, but you can see the bottom of the spring's all rusty. And it just takes a little bit of corrosion there, and it sort of gets itself into the metal, creates a very slight bit of weakness, then the spring breaks. So the reason the suspension didn't look any lower, actually, because it's only the very, very bottom of the spring that's broken. It's still sitting nicely in the cup, and that was obviously, that was the rattling noise when she was going over bumps and things. So I need to get a pair of springs for it at some point, but because of where it's broken, actually, it's not too much of a disaster, that. But I do need to get it done because they'll probably spot that on an MOT. But yeah, really quite a common fault, especially this time of year, and when the roads start getting salted as well, because the salt obviously massively increases the corrosion of components underneath the car. So that's what our rattling noise was. Very quickly just going to do an oil and filter change because it's due a service as well. Then we'll get onto the Mini. So I've been busy most of the day today. It's a Sunday and I've been on it for a good 4 or 5 hours. I've not actually achieved a great deal at all, not much to video. I've really just been stripping all of this lot down, cleaning it up, inspecting it, and then it's all been getting a lick of paint. Mostly hammerite. Obviously we've got our arms already done, our radius arms ready to go. There's a few more bits I need to do, make up brake pipes, fit the bearings in, but we're all pretty good. I've got bits all around the place at the moment, just drying off. They've had a primer, and then they've had silver spray, and then they've had lacquer as well, just to give a bit of extra protection. So they're all looking good. And I was actually, let me just show you this, I was in two minds whether to do the rear wheel bearings because they were actually okay. One side had way too much grease in, the other side looked okay. But when I actually took the bearing out, look at that bearing. This grease in it is like hard. It's not like greasy at all. It's, yeah, that bearing would have failed. So I'm glad I'm going to be doing that. So that can go in the bin. But like I say, first thing I've got to do, a whacking great big hole here. I did reach out and ask if anyone had a repair panel, but don't think they did. You can buy this piece here. I think it's just over 100 quid from Heritage, but it's not going to be particularly easy to replace just because the spot welds are sort of there, so getting a drill in drilling the spot welds out nicely, and it'd be spot welded back through here, and there's a strengthening piece that goes behind the catch. It is just where someone's fitted a whacking great big subwoofer in the past. I'm not actually sure how big the hole is. Should we measure it? It's either a 10 or a 12. Yeah, so that's an 11-inch hole, so that would have been a 12-inch subwoofer in there probably. Yeah. Wow. I bet that was proper bass heads wet dream originally. But for me, I don't need that. I'll have the sound of those twin carburettors to listen to. So we're going to fill this hole in here. I'm not too worried about the holes. These are holes for 6x9, so they're bigger than the original speaker holes. But I'm fine with that actually. I think a pair of 6x9s in the back of a Mini, actually coupled to a nice head unit, gives a nice setup. So I'll probably put 6x9s back in again. So I'm not going to touch those holes. I'm going to do this hole here. I'm using some Zintek coated mould still, so I need to clean up the edges where we're going to weld so we don't get that burning the zinc, because it's not good for your health. And then originally there would have been a couple of swaged holes in here in the parcel shelf. There's a couple of what would you call them? I don't know. Ribs. So when we put it back in, I'll weld it up, and Mark has got a swaging tool. I might just put those holes back in. So bear with me. Let's get the welder out. Let's get that cleaned up. Probably a bit of cardboard aided design to get us going, and then we'll get that welded in. I very much suspect it's going to warp quite a lot when I do it, but it's mostly cosmetic. Right, there we go. That was a lot quicker and easier than I thought it would be. Again, like when I'd done the door, because I'd left a bit of an overlap, it makes it so much easier to weld. And again, it's not too much of a worry to have an overlap somewhere like this. So I'm literally just gonna whack some green hammerite on there, and I think we're pretty much done. It is slightly raised, so obviously where you weld it, it heats up and it distorts, so it is slightly proud in the middle, sort of dish shaped that way, but that really doesn't matter. I could probably manipulate it down if I wanted to. Yeah, and I'm not sure whether I'll do the holes or not. I mean, I don't actually know what those two holes there do. Originally, like Minis did have centre speakers on, didn't they, where that hole went. So I don't think it matters that it's not there. Underneath, inside the boot, yeah, all looks good. Now I might just, like I say, there is a little bit of an overlap. Not worried about that at all. I might just go around with some seam seal around there. And then one of the next jobs actually is I need to paint the inside of the boot. I could do with doing that before I put the subframe back in, because obviously the subframe bolts go down through, so it could do a bit painted first. But I'll see how we're doing for time. There we go. And now with a quick lick of paint on there. It's only hammerite. It's not British Racing Green, but that'll have a parcel shelf in there. You'll never see that. So lots done today. Not much videoed. Probably not gonna get that assembled during the week. So that might be the end of today's video. If it is, thank you very much for tuning back in. Really do appreciate it. Remember to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you want to drop me a comment, I do read all the comments. And if you're not a subscriber, please do consider subscribing. We are really making some headway on the John Cooper conversion Racing Green now. This will be a really special car once it's done. And it definitely feels like we are getting somewhere now.